So welcome everybody to another episode of Tap Talks, your favorite online chat show, everything about the Third Avenue Playhouse you ever wanted to know. And with us today, our guest is Michael Cotey. He's the creator of #Enough, the Plays to End Gun Violence, the project we're participating in a part of a nationwide reading happening on December 14th at 7 p.m. And we'll get into that momentarily, but I know that for most of you watching this right now, you're probably unfamiliar with Michael. So Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what your background is, and all that.
Yeah. I'm so thanks for having me, Bob. I am from South Milwaukee originally. I'm a Wisconsin native. Ended up going to University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee for my undergrad. Was part of the BFA acting program there, and then out of school did the acting thing for a little bit. So I was doing Shakespeare festivals, Illinois, Utah Shakespeare, working at Next Act and in town at First Stage, and shortly after, I had a number of gigs lined up, which was really great right out of school, and then I saw like this vast emptiness past like a certain day in my schedule, and I was like, I don't know what to do with that. So I started a company with a couple of friends of mine in college called Youngblood, and Youngblood was around for 3 or 4 years. We did about a dozen or so shows, and our thing was we would do plays that were by playwrights not really being done, new to us, I guess, but not really being done in Milwaukee. We would involve as many of our friends and emerging artists as we could, and we'd be doing them in a lot of found spaces. So we do plays in warehouses, and we did a play on a farm, and we did a play in a psychiatric hospital cafeteria. So just like bringing theater into like strange and unusual places throughout Milwaukee. And from there, that's when I really figured out that I enjoyed and felt more natural as a director. And that was sort of my place in the rehearsal hall, and started pursuing that more regularly. Some of my first things I did was at Milwaukee Chamber Theater doing a Young Playwrights Festival, where Michael Wright really saw something in me worth nurturing. So I ended up spending a lot of time coming back there, a couple of seasons doing shows there. And soon into that, I decided I wanted to go back to school, and spent 3 years at Northwestern getting my MFA in directing. And so now I live in Chicago, been here about 6 years, still work in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin quite a bit as a director. And then recently, this past year, really kind of went all in on this idea, this #Enough project, and have been devoting, almost 100% of my time now that the pandemic is on, like literally, kind of 100% of my time on this project, which has been a bit of a saving grace to have something that feels so fulfilling while this is going on.
And not so incidentally, you're a new father.
Yeah, I am a new father. That's true.
By the way, in the middle of all that.
Yeah, well, of course, when we knew we were going to have a kid, we didn't know that the pandemic was going to come. But my wife and I were just talking about this morning. I mean, the kind of blessing about this, if you can find silver linings, is that, for 6 months, he's 6 months old now, which is insane to me. Mm-hmm. But, we've spent every minute of every day with him. We haven't had to take him into daycare. And so the changes feel profound, but also like, one day you're wondering, like, why doesn't he fit into any of his baby clothes anymore? So it's been a blessing that way of just, we get to do something that a lot of parents, right now in our generation aren't able to do, which is just be with our kid all the time. And so that's hard. It's challenging. It's a total mind shift, but it's also, I mean, like I wouldn't trade it. If we had a second, I wouldn't know how to adjust to a different schedule.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, let's get into #Enough. Yeah. Tell us how it even got started. How'd you come up with this idea? with all the details about it. Actually, maybe before that, just to explain exactly what hashtag enough is.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. So the project really has two main components to it. The first is that we had a call for submissions for teenagers in 6th to 12th grade to write short 10-minute plays that confront the issue of gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
The prompt was basically as open as that. We try to lead with the idea that that this generation has thoughts and feelings and opinions about this subject that they don't need to hear from us about what our opinions are. We want to hear from them. So we got 184 submissions from 23 states and 3 countries in our submission process, which again sort of landed right in the middle of the coronavirus happening. And from there, those plays have been read, and then 7 have been selected by this amazing group of playwrights, award-winning playwrights like Lauren Gunderson, David Henry Wong, Terrell McCraney, Robert Schenken, Karen Zacharias. And they picked 7 plays that are now going to be read in places like TAP as part of our nationwide reading on December 14th, which is the 8-year remembrance of the shootings at Sandy Hook. And then subsequently, the plays are also being produced on a streaming platform called Broadway On Demand, and they will be published by PlayScripts and then be made available for licensing and use by high school and teen groups of theaters, from in perpetuity. And this is our first round of it, and what initially started as just a project for myself to do something on this issue that I felt sort of helpless about. It has become something that I want to continue on into subsequent rounds and involve more teens. But to talk about like where it came from, So when Parkland happened 2 years ago, I was in rehearsal and really kind of struck by this sensation of deja vu, I suppose, of being, also, like, incidentally, like, I was thinking about this morning too, is that when Sandy Hook happened, I had a show running and was at the theater. And when the Las Vegas shooting happened, I was, in tech for a show. And here I was again, like, in rehearsal, doing another play. And this horrible event happens. And just kind of wondering, like, how are we in this cycle? Like, how are we back here? And I started then thinking, like, okay, well, what would be a theater response to this? And when I was running Youngblood, one of the first things we did was we took part in the Laramie Project 10 years later, which was the Tectonic Theater made the sequel to Laramie Project available to 150 companies. And we were like this, I mean, we had like $5 in the bank account, right? But we were like this tiny company representing Milwaukee as the people doing this reading. And I remember feeling how powerful it was to be part of this larger conversation on these important issues. So I knew that was sort of a component of it. It was like, how do we get a series of plays or a play into multiple communities? It took a little bit of perspective then to see what came out of Parkland. March for Our Lives, Students Demand Action, all these young people who, to today are really the ones being like, hey, listen, like, why isn't anything changing on all of these important issues, not just gun violence? So when El Paso and Dayton mass shootings happened in sort of like the same 24-hour period, I knew I had sort of the beginning of an idea, and I knew kind of like it wasn't going to happen unless I move forward with it. And like that day wrote up a proposal and just started, I mean, like literally like almost cold calling everybody I knew, and the amazing thing about this project is, we've got 48 places today, 48 places across the country that are taking part in this nationwide reading. We had 184 submissions, got a lot of goodwill. We've got these amazing playwrights working on this. All of that is incredible to me because I didn't know like nearly any of these people before doing this project. And I don't, I'd love to think it's because I'm charming, but I think it's more because like people want to do something about this issue and want to do something in this arena about this issue. and want to give space to these young people in order to express their voice. And that's ultimately what I feel like the goal of the project is, we have these spaces, we have this ability to hold space. In normal times, it's in physical proximity to one another, but we have these digital platforms, right? And all these young people need is just this space. They just need the space in order to, share with us their perspectives and share with us their concerns. And all we need to do is give them the opportunity to listen. And I think we could have some important conversation can come from that. So that's been the focus from almost this time last year is, how do we make this as youth led and youth driven and youth centered as possible? Because I wrote about this in something #enough related, but it's their generation that's proven to be more empathetic, more focused on equity than my generation even was. And those are all the things that we say we champion in the theater. So why don't we give them the space to express those things?
Yeah, that really struck a chord with me when you first proposed it to us. It's been a subject that I've been involved with for several years now. And it first hit home for me long before Parkland. I was teaching college up in New Haven, Connecticut, and Virginia Tech happened. The shooting on the campus of Virginia Tech. And heretofore, the students I was dealing with didn't seem that politically active, didn't seem that engaged with current events so much. And once that happened, the next day when people came in my class, they were just ashen. They couldn't process it. They couldn't. The main thing was, and it comes out in one of the plays, the #enough plays, where one of the characters says, "That could have been me. That could have been me in that classroom. That could have been me in that dorm. That could have been me." And it hit them just in a deep place. And I'd never seen them be that way before, and that led to a lot of discussions. We ended up doing the play Columbinus at the college, and ended up taking it to the Kennedy Center Festival, and that got them engaged. And when I got here to Sturgeon Bay, I really wanted to try that again. It was such an incredible time working with college students on that play. So I thought, well, I'm working with a lot of high school students up here, so why not? The play is about high school students.
Yeah.
And so we did it, and it was a phenomenal event up here. But the eye-opening thing for me was dealing with these high school students. I remember having a first read through of the play, and it's rough. It doesn't pull any punches, and especially when you get into the video transcripts of the two Columbine killers that are done verbatim. And so I asked them, first of all, is there anything in this play that's unusual to you, that's off-putting, that's just not part of your experience? And they all shrugged and went, "Oh no, this is what we're talking about all the time.
Yeah.
It's the language we use. It's what we're doing." And then the big question was, I said, how many mass shootings can you count that have happened in your lifetime? And they started rattling them off. There were a number of them by then, and that was eye-opening to me, because at their age, I couldn't have thought of one.
Yeah.
And suddenly, and it's unfortunately a fact of their life right now, lockdowns and everything else. So it is part of their conversation, whether the adults probably aren't nearly as aware of just the concerns that,
Hmm.
that these young people have over
That
there. I mean, they're living it every day in school. Uh,
that's that's one of the big takeaways I had just from reading all the plays. So like not just the winners, but everybody in terms of how much this issue must weigh on this generation's mind. I mean, um, similarly, I'm, I think it's fair to say I'm closer in age than you are to the young writers of this project. But you know, I was maybe in middle school when Columbine happened. I was in college when Virginia Tech happened. I remember those events very clearly, but I don't remember ever having the ongoing, I don't know, thought that it could be our school. It could be, it could happen here. They felt very much like outline events
right,
and very much, I remember Columbine. I remember going home and I remember my mom being just devastated because I think it shook her world in a way to think that that could happen at a school and that could happen to kids. But I think, we've reached a point where it's completely numb and you kind of the response is almost like a automatic eye roll of like here it is again, here it happens again, and it's sort of you know a what do we do about it? Just so happens so frequently, and looking at numbers, even with us being in like various stages of lockdown across the country and schools being closed or virtual mostly, this year, according to the Gun Violence Archive, has had more mass shootings already than last year, which is also the deadliest year in the time that they've recorded in the past 8. How
wow,
that's even possible is beyond me. Mass shooting, they describe it as like 4 or more people in
right.
sort of the same time or place. Um, but that's like it's frightening to think that that's happened so often, and it can't even crack the news cycle in a way. It doesn't even rise to our consciousness. But then like reading these plays, what I hear is that it's an undercurrent of thought, all the time.
Hmm.
And like that's completely unfair for us, for our kids, and also the teachers and parents who take care of them, who are have just as much anxiety and worry about this as probably their young people do. So that was a big eye opener for me. It's just I think I knew that that was going to be the response, but you can just hear it in all the plays of
Oh
just
yeah,
how loudly this fear, this anxiety sort of speaks inside these kids.
and the really wonderful thing. One of the wonderful things about this was not only just to read these playwrights' work, and just gives me a lot of hope for the future. To have people like that, uh,
Hmm.
kids that are interested in writing for the theater and doing such a wonderful job doing it, and what a boost this is for them. I mean, had this panel of wonderful internationally renowned playwrights choose their work. I mean, oh my God, you'd have to peel me off the ceiling if at 17 if somebody did that for me.
Yeah.
But it's just their takes on this. I mean, they were not given any other instructions other than to write what their impressions, their thoughts about the subject of gun violence, but they were given no guidance as to how they should do that.
Right.
And
Right.
so, talk about some of those plays. What were the differences?
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of like the plays we ended up selecting, that the panelists of playwrights ended up selecting, is that we were also looking to have a conversation among the plays, so that we weren't also having 7 great plays, but they're all about school shootings, right? They're all about, or the threat of school shootings, or however you want to frame it, because that's also the really insidious thing about this issue. Gun violence feels like gun violence. That's the issue. It's like, well, there are 1,000 different issues that are connected to this. You know, one of the plays, two of the plays look at the three of the plays really look at the issue through the lens of race. But even through that lens of race, we're also looking at it through the 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 inequity between how black people with a gun versus white people with a gun are treated. You have police brutality. You also have community violence, which are all separate issues that are connected to things like economic disparities among groups, right?
Yeah.
So you start to see that, like, this is gun violence isn't one issue; it's many issues, and it's not just one story; it's like 1,000 stories. And the other plays that are in this mix is, we do have a play about a school shooting, but we also have a play about just two plays that are really about the anxiety around the threat of it happening. One told from the perspective of students, and one told from the perspective of a teacher. Then we have a play that is just this wild play about gun culture and how it's wrapped up in sort of American mythology, and how those two things are intertwined. And that play is just bonkers and amazing. So it's like that. What's great about the plays is that it's helped me, even though I started this program, right? Like, it's helped me realize even more clearly that this is a multi-layered issue, and perhaps the problem around us making any progress on it is that we treat it like it's one single thing. And what we need to see, and I hope the plays help us see, is that there are many ways to talk about this issue and many ways that it impacts lives differently, which is also the reason why, like, in these readings across the country, we're encouraging a chance for dialogue, because the way Chicago is going to talk, the read in Chicago, the way they're going to talk about their relationship to gun violence is totally different than Sturgeon Bay, and it's going to be totally different than El Paso, which there's a reading there, and they had a mass shooting, pretty major one a couple of years ago. So and one of the things is that we haven't even, in the plays that we did, there's a whole host of issues that we don't even have a chance to touch on in this round. The fact that, gun suicides make up, half the amount of gun deaths each year. Accidental shootings, violence against members of the LGBT community. That there's just a whole host of ways. Domestic violence, the ways that I don't have the exact statistic in front of me, but the ways that guns play a role among intimate partners, right? So, and domestic abuse. I mean, it's just there's so many ways to talk about the issue, and hopefully through the lens of these stories, we can, start to turn it from just a pro-gun, anti-gun conversation to, that's complicated, and then maybe we need to have a more complex conversation about what we can do as a community that isn't so binary in for and against.
Yeah, very well put. I mean, that's exactly, it's exactly what we should be thinking about. It is not just a one size fits all issue. It's so multifaceted and complicated, and it gets boiled down to, they want to take my guns away and all that kind of stuff, and it's not about that. It is a public health crisis. And
it's also, Bob, it's also worth just pointing out too, is that in putting this out there, there's nothing in our rules that said, like, hey, if you're a young person and gun culture is an important part of your life, and an important part of, like, your family and tradition, there's nothing in our literature that said you couldn't write that play. And I think that's important to know too, is that this is important to people. And I think it's not just it's not just extremes of this conversation that we're talking about. So I think I think the biggest point of view that we put out there with our project is that, like, I think we could all get behind the notion that if we could reduce the amount of gun violence, period, that would just be a positive thing.
Yeah.
I think we all might not agree on what ways we can do that. And that's where the conversation needs to be had. But I think part of it is that we're not seeing, so like I keep coming back to this. It's like I can put up statistics for days, and I can put up numbers and just haunting numbers for days, but they just don't penetrate in the way they should. But stories can. Stories. That's why we try to do what we do in the theater to begin with. Is that we try to get people to think differently sometimes and think more deeply. So,
yeah, and I don't think any of these plays really reflect any kind of what you would call a political agenda at all. These are individual stories told in vastly different ways, but reflecting just how they feel about gun violence and what, just how that impacts their lives, and how they choose to represent that. So how has the pandemic affected this project?
Yeah, I mean, probably in a lot of the same ways it's impacted everybody in terms of, finding ways to accommodate, or, just realize that the beautiful plans you had may not be coming to fruition. One of the major losses for the project, honestly, was we were slated to have this week of workshops at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. They were going to host us and host the playwrights and do it as part of their new play development project. And that was something that early on we just knew was going to get scrapped because of not only like whether or not we could do it, and they eventually canceled their whole season, but just like our timeline got shifted. So our deadline was April 20th. We moved it to June. Everything got sort of like shifted backwards. In the positive column, I think some people got involved because there was a need to do something. There's a need or desire to produce, desire to put on work, and this felt like a worthy endeavor. The digital aspect of this has opened up a lot of doors. Like you had been mentioning, I can't remember if it was before we recorded this or during, but you were mentioning like the ability to call on artists from, who can't be with you physically, but can be with you virtually. So that's led to some interesting opportunities of different communities coming together for reading. We're doing this thing on Broadway on Demand, which involves 6 different companies from all across the country: the South Coast Rep, Berkeley Rep, Arizona Theater Company, Goodman Alliance, and Orlando Theater. And they're all producing as part of it. So there's been definitely some eye-opening things about where this project could even be in a non-pandemic time, which is, maybe there's something to virtual readings in this context that's actually beneficial. Like how else could you connect to really different communities who deal with gun violence in different ways, but would benefit from having a conversation with one another? So like most, it's not sometimes the thing we planned or like the ideal thing, but it's helping me think a little differently about like what might be possible in the future. And also, we're running a crowdfunding campaign right now to raise some money for the project and to raise some money for the next round. And, this, I don't have to tell you, but it's like, nothing about this year has provided ideal timing for that sort of thing.
No.
So
no.
So it's things like that are challenging because people want to help, people want to participate, but funds and bandwidth is just low, and people I think are just trying to get through this winter too. And that'll be the last thing I'll say too, is that we've had some people who've been really excited about doing a reading, but I had one school come to me and say, like, look, our students are really struggling with virtual learning. They're not, emotionally, they're not doing super great with how tough things are, and like we would like to do this in the future, but right now it's not the thing they want to engage on, and that makes total sense. I mean, I can understand that too. So yeah. I think for some this is a bit of a escape from the kind of grind that the coronavirus has been providing us all year long, and for others it's rather spend energy elsewhere, and that makes sense.
It does. And yeah, for us, it's what you referred to earlier. We were going to have, of course, a live reading on our stage, and that is not going to happen. So it opened up a whole lot of possibilities for us in terms of casting and the people we're working with. A lot of the actors and directors we work with come from outside of Door County. And some within Door County. So we would not have been able to bring up those people to Sturgeon Bay. We don't have that kind of budget to do that. So we just went to them where they are now. So as a result, we'll be coming from, list the cities here, Milwaukee, Chicago, New York, Houston, and Sturgeon Bay.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so it's been great, and just assembling all those people together. A lot of new faces for us, and a lot of names that probably some of you might recognize from the directors: Adam Kudashat, Malkia Stampley, Isaiah Spetz, who is born and raised in Door County, is now graduating from NYU in their theater program.
Great.
And Michael Wright and Cookie I'm going to mispronounce her name. Cookie Roblio. She's from Houston. And myself, Marie Treadway, also is one of the directors. And then they've assembled just this wonderful collection of people. Yeah, you mentioned some that you knew, like Jennifer Vosters and Josh Krause.
Yeah.
Demont Henning. And I'm sure there are others that you would know as well. Ryan Schaubuck.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Is in the Buffalo Bill.
Oh, who's he playing?
Buffalo Bill. Hunter.
Oh,
of course.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah. So it's a wild collection of people. All of our readings are going to be recorded. We'll edit them together. And then present them at 7:00 on December 14th.
Oh, beautiful.
And then immediately following that, we'll have a Facebook Live talkback with as many of the actors and directors that can join us for that. And so, yeah, it's just a really exciting event. And let me just, while I'm thinking about that, telling people now, all you have to do is go to our website, thirdavenueplayhouse.com, and register. It is free. We just need you to register, and we're not obviously we're not collecting donations for ourselves. What we are doing is referring everybody. If you wish to donate, give to Sandy Hook Promise, the organization founded by family and friends of the victims of the Sandy Hook shootings. December 14th, of course, is the anniversary of that tragic event, and so we want to highlight that charity on that evening for us. Let me see. Anything else you can?
I don't think so at the moment. I mean, I think if people want to stay up to date with what this project is doing and what's going on, kind of nationally with it, enoughplays.com is our website. You can sign up for our newsletter, and it'll get you all the details of what's happening. and we're on all the streaming or the social media services that all the kids are using. So we're on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and that's where we've been putting updates with the nationwide readings and with who the playwrights are, and we'll certainly be letting you know what's going on with TAP and other folks through that as well. So this is wonderful, though, Bob. That lineup sounds really cool. It's really great.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little overwhelming. Well, I can't talk about overwhelming to you. You're doing the whole thing. But my little end of it, I never tried to do anything like this before myself. So it's been really gratifying, and people just latched onto it as soon as I asked the people. So I didn't have anybody turn me down, which was really nice. and so yeah, so it's going forward just very smoothly, and just reiterating the fact that you said how many places doing this now? How many venues?
Currently, there's 48. And we're hoping, I know December is right around the corner, but we're hoping to, if we can, get in every state, and we're hoping, to break 50, which seems like that will happen. But some of those places, which is really cool, is like in Philadelphia, we've got a number of theaters that are teaming up together, doing a little bit of a coalition to produce the plays. We've got a reading in Germany and a reading in India and Johannesburg. So it's mind blowing that that's happening, but it's really exciting.
And then one of the exciting things for me is just the synergy of all these things happening exactly at the same time. All over the country, different parts of the world. 7:00, December 14th. So it's a rather historic event that you've initiated and created. It's your little baby here. And you mentioned you're doing a crowdfunding thing. Is that information on your website?
Yeah. If you go to our website, upper right-hand corner, there's a donate button. It'll take you straight to the crowdfunding. Basically, we're trying to raise around $15,000 for the project. That amount of money allows us to, really wrap up this year and all the costs around this year, and allows me to put clothes on my newborn child's back. Not to make anyone feel guilty, but so we get to do that. Each of our playwrights receives a $500 stipend for their work. So money goes to them, and then that like 10 grand gets us all kind of paid up for the year and gets the whole thing taken care of. And then we're looking to raise another 5 to just get us jump started into the next year, to get us at a place where we can hit the ground running. Whereas this year we really just sort of started from the basement and built up. So if anyone is able to give, I know times are really tight, and there's a lot of places like your capital campaign that you're doing right now that are worthy of attention. So if anyone's able to give, no amount is too small, and if you can share it and share what TAP is doing with the reading on your social media, that's just as helpful for us, is just to get people to be a part of this and to be a part of the conversation that we're having.
Great. Well, our time is about up, so thank you again for doing this, Michael.
Thank you, Bob.
I look forward to December 14th and beyond. And I just think this project is not only great for us, but it's tremendous for everyone involved. And I hope it continues. I hope you're able to one day retire it, because there'll be no need for anything like this to happen. But while there is, I'm glad that you have started this ball rolling.
Thank you.
And thanks for involving us in it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate you.
And we have a anonymous sponsor who sponsors our TAP Talk. So we want to thank you, anonymous sponsor. And we will see you next time.